The fog that night was thicker than Joss Calder had ever seen, not the soft kind that clung to your boots and drifted lazily over the water, but the heavy, suffocating sort that swallowed the harbor whole. Lanterns along the pier burned like dying stars, their light smothered by the gray. Every sound was dampened, the murmur of the tide, the clink of rigging, even the gulls had gone silent. Somewhere out beyond that rolling wall of mist was the black ship. Most men in Port Town spoke of her only after several drinks, voices hushed, glancing over shoulders as if she might rise out of the fog at the mention of her name. They said she was older than any navy, that she had no crew but the dead, that her sails were woven from the shadows of drowned men. Sailors claimed that any who boarded her never came back quite human, if they came back at all. But Joss wasn't a man who could afford fear. He had debts, bad ones, and the kind of enemies that didn't forgive. He'd lost his berth on the Sea Wren after a drunken fight with the first mate, and now no captain in the bay would take him. So when the man in the oilskin coat approached him at the tavern that night, Joss listened. "You're looking for work," the stranger had said, voice low and rough as gravel dragged through water. He didn't ask, he stated it, as if he already knew. Joss nodded. "You paying coin?" The man smiled, a thin, humorless curve beneath the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat. "Coin, yes, and something rarer. A clean start." Joss almost laughed. "Ain't no such thing in this port, friend." "Then perhaps," the man said, sliding a small silver coin across the table, "you've been in the wrong kind of work." Joss picked it up. It was cold, unnaturally so, like ice that never melted. Strange symbols were etched into its face, lines, spirals, marks that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking. As he turned it over, the tavern's firelight flickered green across the surface. "What kind of job?" he asked, wary. "The kind only desperate men take," the stranger said softly. "There's something that must be retrieved. Something lost, and sealed away. You'll be paid well, and no one will trouble you again." "And what's the catch?" The man leaned forward, and Joss finally saw his eyes, pale gray, like storm clouds over the sea. "Don't ask questions you aren't ready to answer," he murmured. "At dawn, the coin will guide you to the ship. You'll know which one." Joss frowned. "And your name?" "Vane," the man said, rising to leave. "Captain Vane." When Joss blinked, the stranger was gone, only a faint trace of salt and smoke left behind. He turned the coin in his fingers long after, unable to shake the chill from his skin. Outside, the fog pressed against the tavern windows like a living thing. A drunk muttered something about the black ship in the corner, and the others told him to hush. Joss laughed it off, but his voice came out thin. He didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes, a ship with black sails cutting through lightning, figures with hollow eyes whispering beneath the waves, and that same cold coin gleaming like a beacon in the dark. By dawn, the fog still hadn't lifted. The world felt caught between night and morning. The streets were empty as Joss made his way down to the harbor. He could hear water lapping against the pier but couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. He held up the coin, unsure why, and to his surprise, it began to glow faintly green, pulsing like a heartbeat. He followed its light down the pier, past silent boats rocking gently in the mist. The air grew colder with every step until his breath came out in thin white trails. Then he saw it, a shape emerging slowly from the fog, darker than the night itself. The black ship, her hull gleamed like wet oil, her sails hanging limp though no wind stirred. Chains draped across her sides, and strange runes burned faintly along her prow. No flag, no movement, yet she seemed alive, as if the fog itself was breathing through her timbers. Joss swallowed hard. "Well," he muttered, "work's work." He found a rowboat tied nearby and pushed off into the gray. The water was unnaturally still. No ripples followed his oars, even his own reflection refused to show. He rowed toward the ship, the coin in his pocket growing colder by the minute. Halfway there, he heard something, faint singing, distant and haunting, like a woman's voice carried from beneath the surface of the sea. The melody tugged at his mind, ancient and sorrowful. He shook his head to clear it, but the sound only grew stronger. Then, as his boat neared the massive hull, the singing stopped. The sea stilled completely. He looked up, and almost lost his balance. The ship's sides towered above him, impossibly high, slick and dark as obsidian. Barnacles clung to the lower planks, but instead of white, they were black, glinting like eyes. There was no crew visible, no sound but the faint creak of the tide against wood. Joss cupped his hands and shouted, "Ahoy! Captain Vane!" No answer. He was about to call again when, with a long, drawn-out groan, a rope ladder uncoiled down the side of the ship, though no one was there to drop it. The ladder swayed slightly, creaking in the still air. Joss hesitated. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to row until the shore was a distant dream. But desperation has a way of smothering fear. He tucked the coin deeper into his pocket and began to climb. Each rung was slick and cold, soaking his hands. The mist thickened as he rose, swallowing the world below. When he finally pulled himself over the railing, his boots landed on a deck slick with dew, or maybe something thicker. The boards beneath his feet vibrated faintly, like the pulse of some great creature. "Captain Vane," he called again, voice trembling now. Silence. Then, from somewhere deep in the fog above, a whisper brushed past his ear, low and cold and close enough to feel breath. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Calder, you're late." The silence aboard the black ship was unnatural, thick, humming, alive. Joss had sailed through storms that tore masts in half and heard the screams of men swallowed by the sea, but never had he known quiet like this. It pressed against his skull, turning every creak of the deck into a heartbeat, every whisper of fog into a word just out of reach. He took a cautious step forward. The planks beneath him were slick and cold, faintly luminous under the sickly blue glow of the ship's lanterns. Their light burned wrong, too steady, too cold, flames that gave no warmth. He rubbed his arms for heat, but his breath still came out in white clouds. "Captain Vane," he called again. No reply, only the slow, rhythmic thrum, a sound like a pulse deep in the hull, as if the ship itself were alive and breathing. Joss gritted his teeth and moved toward the nearest stairwell leading below deck. The passage was narrow, lined with ropes that seemed to twitch when his shoulder brushed them. The air smelled of brine and old metal, and beneath that, a faint sweetness that turned his stomach. As he descended, the lanterns grew dimmer, their blue flames flickering with each step. He reached the lower deck and froze. There was movement ahead, slow, unsteady shapes in the dark. At first, he thought they were other sailors, crewmen who'd survived whatever nightmare stories the harbor told. But as his eyes adjusted, he saw the truth. Their skin was pale, stretched too thin, and their eyes glowed faint green-like. The coin in his pocket. Some wore old uniforms, salt-crusted and torn, others had ropes around their necks, the ends trailing like seaweed. They moved without sound, their heads lolling as if held by invisible strings. Joss's instinct screamed to run, but his legs wouldn't move. One of the figures turned toward him, its face ghost-white, lips blue. When its mouth opened, no voice came, just a hollow hiss, as though the sea itself were breathing through it. "Bloody hell," he whispered, taking a step back. Another figure shambled forward, hand raised, not to attack, but to point down the corridor. Its eyes flickered, like lanterns in a storm. The gesture was slow, deliberate, and somehow pleading. Joss swallowed. "You want me to go there?" The thing nodded once, stiffly, before collapsing to its knees, its form dissolving into mist that crawled across the floor like spilled smoke. He ran. The passage seemed to stretch as he moved, the walls shifting, the ship groaning beneath his feet. The thrum grew louder now, the heartbeat of the ship pulsing in time with his own. At last, he burst into a large chamber lit by a single swinging lantern. It revealed a chest, old, iron-bound, and covered in strange markings. It was large enough for a man to fit inside, and the air around it shimmered faintly, as if distorted by heat. A note lay on top of it, the handwriting jagged but unmistakable. "This is what's lost. Deliver it to the tower before moonrise. Do not open." Captain Vane's handwriting. Joss approached slowly, crouching beside the chest. The iron was cold, colder than the sea, and as his fingers brushed its surface, the thrum of the ship synchronized with his heartbeat. The symbols carved into the metal shifted under his touch, ancient letters that seemed to whisper, "Open me." And then he heard them, voices, faint and overlapping, murmuring just beyond hearing. They rose and fell like waves, their tones desperate, begging. "Please, open, help us. It's a gift, freedom, all you ever wanted." He clutched his head, stumbling back. The whispers grew sharper, clearer. One of them sounded like his mother. Another, like his own voice. "Stop it," he shouted. The echoes fell silent, only the creak of the hull remained. He stared at the chest. Whatever was inside, it was alive. He could feel it moving, slow, rhythmic, like breathing. A faint line of frost spread from the lock, crawling over the boards. "Don't open it," he muttered to himself. "Just the job, that's all. Take it to the tower." He bent to lift it. It was heavy, but not impossibly so, though when he tried to step away, the floor shifted under him. The sound returned. That low hum of the ship's heart, now faster, angrier. The air thickened, and from the shadows at the far end of the hold, something began to form, a shape, tall and human, but rippling as if seen through deep water. Two eyes opened in the dark, burning faint green. "Who's there?" Joss called out, voice cracking. The figure didn't move closer. Instead, it spoke, or rather, the sound came from everywhere at once, like 100 drowned voices speaking through one mouth. "Hurry," it said. The voice was warped, echoing, but there was pain in it, terrible, ancient pain. "What do you mean, hurry?" Joss asked. The shape flickered like a dying flame. "It wakes." Before Joss could ask another word, the figure dissolved, melting into mist that raced up the stairway. The entire ship groaned in response, timbers cracking as though the hull were under impossible strain. Joss grabbed the chest and stumbled toward the steps. The deck tilted beneath him, and the lantern fell, shattering into a burst of blue flame. The corridor lit up, revealing the ghostly crew once more, dozens of them now. Emerging from the walls, their eyes glowing brighter, their hands reaching. They didn't attack, they pleaded. Their mouths opened in silent cries as Joss ran through them, his boots slipping on the slick boards. When his shoulder brushed one, it turned to mist, cold as ice and gone in an instant. The ship's heartbeat was deafening now. Waves crashed against the hull, but when Joss looked over the rail, he saw the sea boiling black, no stars, no moon, only an endless, shifting void. He ran to the lifeboat. The ropes that held it were stiff with frost, but he managed to cut them loose with his knife. The moment the small boat hit the water, the black ship shuddered. A deep, guttural moan rolled from below, not metal, not storm, but something alive. The sails twisted, snapping like wings, and the fog swallowed everything. Joss rowed with all his strength, his breath ragged, his hands burning from the cold. Behind him, the black ship began to sink without a sound, slipping beneath the surface as if it had never existed. When he looked back one last time, all he saw was a faint green light, glowing where the ship had been. Then that too faded, leaving only black water and silence. Joss clutched the chest to his chest. It was still pulsing, slow, steady, alive. And somewhere inside his head, a voice whispered faintly, "You've taken it, now you belong to it." Joss woke to the sound of gulls crying overhead, a cruel, ordinary sound after the nightmare of the night before. The world was bright, too bright. Sunlight stabbed through his eyelids, forcing him to squint. He was lying face down in damp sand, half buried, his body aching as if he'd been dragged across the ocean floor. The taste of salt coated his tongue, and when he tried to move, his limbs trembled. The surf hissed nearby, slow and lazy, as though nothing strange had happened at all. But when he turned his head, the sight that met him made his blood run cold. The chest lay beside him. Its iron sides were streaked with seaweed and sand, but the lock was unbroken, the symbols faintly glowing beneath the morning light. He reached out with a shaking hand. It was warm now, not cold. Warm like flesh. For a brief, terrible moment, he swore it breathed. Joss scrambled back on hands and knees. His last memory came in flashes. The ship sinking, that final whisper, "You belong to it." He'd tried to forget, but the words echoed through him like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. He looked out to sea. The horizon shimmered with heat and distance, and there, faint but unmistakable, was a dark smudge. It looked like a ship's silhouette, drifting away. The black ship. He stared for a long time, unable to move. Part of him wanted to believe it was a trick of the light, that he'd survived a storm and washed ashore with nothing more than a broken mind. But then he felt it, the coin in his pocket, vibrating softly, humming in rhythm with the waves. The same green pulse. "Captain Vane," he muttered. "You better have some answers." He hoisted the chest with effort. It was heavy, but lighter than it looked, almost as if something inside wanted to be carried. With each step inland, the hum of the coin grew stronger, tugging him like a compass. The dunes rose around him, silent and empty except for the wind. At the crest of the tallest dune, he saw it, an old lighthouse standing alone on a rocky bluff. Weather-beaten, half collapsed, its windows dark. But as Joss stared, he noticed one faint light flickering near the top, pale and green, just like the ship's lanterns. The coin's hum became a steady throb. That was the tower. He trudged toward it, boots sinking into the sand. The closer he got, the colder the air became. By the time he reached the base of the lighthouse, the sunlight seemed weaker, filtered through an unseen haze. The door hung half open, creaking softly. He hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. The air was thick with the smell of salt and old smoke. Seaweed clung to the walls, and barnacles covered the steps spiraling upward. The faint light glowed from above, steady now, beckoning. As he climbed, the sound of waves faded, replaced by a deep, slow rhythm. The same heartbeat he'd heard in the belly of the black ship. At the top, the room opened into a circular chamber. Its windows faced the sea, but every pane was fogged. In the center stood Captain Vane. He looked exactly as before, tall, draped in his oilskin coat, hat shadowing his face. But now, his skin was pale, his hands thin and almost translucent, the veins dark as ink beneath. "You brought it," Vane said softly, eyes never leaving the chest. His voice carried a weight that filled the room. "You did well, Joss Calder." Joss set the chest down with a thud. "What the hell is this? What's inside?" Vane didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window, staring out at the horizon. The black smudge of the ship was gone now, or perhaps it was waiting, just beyond sight. "Every century," Vane began, "the tide changes wrong. The sea hungers. It remembers those who took too much, who sailed too far. And so it calls for payment. A ship rises from the deep to collect the debt, the black ship." Joss frowned. "You mean it's alive?" Vane turned toward him. "Alive? No. It's bound. Cursed, perhaps. But it cannot rest until it's fed. The chest you carry holds what it needs to sleep again." "What's in it?" Joss pressed. "Gold, souls, a damn heart." Vane's eyes flickered. "All three, in a way." Joss took a step back. "You used me. You knew what it would do to me. You chose," Vane said quietly. "You wanted a clean start. The sea gave you one." Something in his tone made Joss's stomach twist. He reached for the coin, still glowing faintly in his pocket. "And what about this? It's been burning through me since last night." Vane's expression didn't change. "That means it's claimed you." Joss froze. "Claimed? The ship doesn't take without leaving something behind," Vane said. "You've carried its burden, touched its heart. Now it knows your name." Before Joss could speak, the chest trembled. The lock snapped open with a metallic crack. Both men turned toward it. Green light spilled out, soft at first, then blinding. The air thickened, and the floor beneath them began to hum. "Don't look," Vane shouted, but it was too late. The lid lifted on its own. Inside was no treasure, no relic, only a swirling mass of light and shadow, pulsing like a living storm. Within it, faces twisted in agony, sailors, men, women, eyes wide, mouths open in silent screams. The sound came next, not loud, but deep, vibrating in Joss's bones. He staggered backward. "What is that?" "The sea's memory," Vane said through clenched teeth. "And now you're part of it." The light grew brighter. Vane tried to close the chest, but his hands passed through it like smoke. "It's chosen," he whispered. "It wants you." Joss's reflection appeared in the nearest window, and what he saw made his heart stop. His eyes glowed faint green, just like the crew's had. His breath came out in mist, though the air was still. The humming coin in his hand melted into liquid silver, seeping into his skin. He fell to his knees. "No, no, I didn't ask for this." The room exploded in light. The chest sealed itself with a deafening clang, and everything went still. When the brightness faded, the lighthouse was empty. The stairs were slick with seawater, and the windows looked out over a calm, endless sea. Only the chest remained, cold, silent, untouched. Far, out on the horizon, a black silhouette moved through the mist once more, sails rising against the sun. At its helm stood a lone figure, eyes burning faint green, one hand gripping the wheel as the fog curled around him. Joss Calder, the newest captain of the black ship, and from somewhere deep beneath the waves, a whisper rose with the tide, carried on the wind.